Stop with the dramatic black woman act. People like you always exaggerate pain. The doctor cut the alarm off mid-scream, the warning flatlining under his thumb as if it had never existed. The woman on the bed arched. "I can't feel my baby," she whispered, fingers slipping on the rail slick with sweat. He sighed, already turning away. "You're not dying. You're anxious. Try behaving like an adult." Behind her stood a man, shoulders rigid, eyes locked on the doctor's back. The doctor never noticed what that quiet man carried, or that every word he'd just spoken was about to cost him everything. Before continuing, comment where in the world you are watching from, and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you can't miss. The fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across the emergency room as Naomi Ward gripped her husband's hand, her face twisted in pain. The midnight hour stretched endless in the sterile hallway, their world narrowed to the steady beep of monitors and the sharp catch of her breath. "Something's wrong, Elias," Naomi whispered, her other hand pressed against her swollen belly. "This isn't normal contractions. It feels like tearing inside." Elias Ward maintained his composed demeanor, though his jaw tightened as he watched his wife struggle. 8 months pregnant, Naomi had been glowing just yesterday. Now her warm brown skin had taken on an ashen cast, sweat beading on her forehead. Nurse Tessa Glenn pushed the wheelchair with efficiency, her experienced hands steady. "Blood pressure's climbing," she noted, glancing at the portable monitor. "We need to get her assessed right away." "Please," Elias said, his voice deliberately measured. "My wife needs immediate attention. These symptoms came on suddenly and… Now, let's not get ahead of ourselves." Dr. Preston Hargrove's voice cut through the air like a blade wrapped in silk. He approached with unhurried steps, barely glancing at the patient chart in his hands. "Mrs. Ward, is it? First pregnancy jitters are perfectly normal." Naomi shook her head, tears forming in her eyes. "No, doctor. I've read everything about normal labor. This is different. It's like something's ripping." "Anxiety often manifests as physical symptoms," Hargrove interrupted, his smile never reaching his eyes. "Especially in certain populations who may not be as familiar with proper prenatal care." Elias felt his fingers twitch, but kept his voice steady. "Doctor, we've followed every recommendation. My wife has had excellent prenatal care. Something is wrong." Nurse Glenn stepped forward. "Dr. Hargrove, her BP is 160/95 and rising. Maybe we should—" "Thank you, Nurse Glenn." Hargrove's tone dropped several degrees. "I believe I can assess my own patient." He turned back to Naomi. "We'll get you settled in the hallway for observation. No need to tie up a room just yet." The clicking of heels announced Gail Renshaw's arrival. The hospital administrator's perfectly styled hair and pressed suit looked out of place at midnight. "Dr. Hargrove, I trust everything is under control? We need to maintain our excellent emergency response metrics." "Just a nervous mother-to-be," Hargrove assured her. "Nothing that warrants disrupting our protocols." Elias watched as they wheeled Naomi to a spot against the wall, underneath flickering fluorescent lights. A thin curtain provided the barest pretense of privacy. His FBI training screamed at him to take control, to demand action, to protect his wife. But years of experience had taught him harsh lessons about how quickly a black man's concern became threatening behavior in places like this. "Sir," Nurse Glenn whispered as she adjusted Naomi's IV, "I'll keep an eye on her. Try to stay calm." Naomi's grip on Elias's hand tightened as another wave of pain hit. "Baby," she gasped. "I can't. Something's really wrong." "I can feel it." "I'm right here," Elias assured her, his thumb stroking the back of her hand. He watched the fetal monitor numbers climbing, his stomach knotting as Naomi's face contorted in agony. Dr. Hargrove passed by, barely pausing. "The wait time for imaging is backed up. We'll reassess in an hour or two." "An hour?" Elias struggled to keep his voice level. "Her pain is getting worse by the minute." "Mr. Ward," Hargrove's tone dripped with condescension, "I understand you're concerned, but your wife's dramatic reaction isn't helping anyone. Perhaps you could encourage her to stay calm?" Nurse Glenn appeared again, her face tight with worry, as she checked Naomi's vitals. "Doctor, her pressure's still climbing. Shouldn't we at least—" "Unless you've suddenly acquired a medical degree, Nurse Glenn, please stick to your assigned duties." Hargrove cut her off without looking up from his phone. Elias felt Naomi's hand go slack in his. Her eyes had grown glassy, unfocused. The monitor's beeping became more erratic. "She's not being dramatic," Elias said, his carefully maintained control cracking. "Something is seriously wrong. Please, Mr. Ward." Gail Renshaw stepped in, her professional smile fixed in place. "Dr. Hargrove is one of our most experienced physicians. Let's trust his judgment and avoid any unfortunate situations." The threat was subtle but clear. Elias saw the security guard shift closer, hand resting on his radio. One wrong move, one raised voice, and he'd be labeled the angry black man, removed from his wife's side when she needed him most. Naomi's whisper drew his attention back. "Elias, I can't feel the baby moving anymore." The fetal monitor's steady rhythm suddenly spiked, its alarm beginning to pulse with increasing urgency. Elias looked desperately toward the nurse's station, but no one moved with any sense of emergency. Then, as suddenly as it started, the alarm went silent. Elias stared at the monitor in confusion. The warning lights had disappeared, but Naomi's grip on his hand had gone terrifyingly weak. "Why did it stop?" he asked, his voice barely controlled. "The alarm. Why did it just—" But Nurse Glenn's face had gone pale as she looked at the monitor, and Elias felt the first real stab of fear pierce his practiced calm. The scream tore through the hallway like shattered glass. Naomi's body arched off the bed, monitors exploding into a chaos of alarms and flashing lights. Her blood pressure numbers spiraled downward as her pulse raced dangerously high. "Code Blue! We need help here!" Nurse Glenn slammed her palm against the emergency call button. Her other hand flew across the equipment, trying to stabilize the readings that were spinning out of control. Dr. Hargrove sauntered over, his face a mask of irritation. With one smooth motion, he reached past Tessa and silenced the shrieking alarms. "These readings are clearly false. The equipment in the hallway can be unreliable." "False?" Elias grabbed the doctor's arm, his careful restraint finally cracking. "Look at her! She's dying!" "Remove your hand," Hargrove said icily. "Security!" "She needs imaging now," Elias insisted, releasing the doctor's arm, but planting himself firmly between Hargrove and the exit. "Get a surgeon down here. Something's torn inside her." "Mr. Ward," Hargrove's voice dripped with disdain, "your emotional state is not helping. Perhaps you should step outside and let the professionals work." "Professional?" Elias's voice shook. "You haven't done a single thing to help her." Naomi's body jerked again, her eyes rolling back as her oxygen levels plummeted. The monitors Hargrove hadn't silenced screamed their warning. A young resident in rumpled scrubs rushed over, his face pale. "Dr. Hargrove, her stats are critically low. Should I call for—" "Dr. Parker," Hargrove cut him off. "Are you questioning my assessment of this situation?" The resident's mouth opened and closed, his eyes darting between Naomi's convulsing form and his superior's cold stare. "No, sir, but protocol states—" "I am the protocol in this department." Hargrove's words fell like ice. "Stand down." Nurse Glenn's hands flew over Naomi's body. trying to stabilize her. "She's hemorrhaging." "Doctor, please, this is what happens when we let hysteria override medical judgment." Hargrove made a show of checking his watch. "If you're all quite finished." Naomi's body went rigid, blood beginning to soak through the thin hospital sheet. The resident took half a step forward, then froze as Hargrove's glare pinned him in place. "Do something!" Elias roared, his composure finally shattering. "She's bleeding out." Security guards appeared at both ends of the hallway, hands on their radios. Gail Renshaw materialized beside them, her professional smile strained. "Mr. Ward, please lower your voice. This is a hospital." "It's a slaughterhouse," Nurse Glenn snapped, her hands pressed against Naomi's stomach. "Doctor, she needs surgery now." Blood pressure numbers crashed lower. Naomi's eyes fluttered, her grip on Elias's hand going slack. The resident looked ready to vomit, trapped between training and terror. "Fine." Hargrove finally waved a dismissive hand. "Call it in. But note my objection to this overreaction in the chart." The next moments dissolved into chaos. A trauma team rushed in, shouting orders. The resident found his courage too late, barking for blood products and an operating room. Nurse Glenn rattled off stats as they wheeled Naomi away, her voice tight with fury and fear. Elias tried to follow, but security blocked his path. Through the gaps between their bodies, he watched the team racing his wife down the corridor, blood dripping onto pristine floor tiles. Time stretched like pulled taffy. Minutes or hours later, Elias couldn't tell, the resident emerged from the operating room. His scrubs were stained dark red, his young face aged decades in a single night. "The baby." He swallowed hard. "We got her out. She's critical, but stable." Elias felt hope flutter weakly. "And my wife?" The resident's eyes filled with tears. He shook his head once. The world stopped turning. Sound became distant, muffled, as if Elias were underwater. Through the haze, he saw Dr. Hargrove at the nurse's station, calmly dictating notes. Patient presented with anxiety symptoms, declined rapidly despite appropriate interventions. Complications arose unexpectedly. Death was unavoidable given patient presentation and circumstances. Elias lunged forward, a sound like a wounded animal tearing from his throat. Security caught him before he could reach Hargrove, muscled arms pinning him against the wall. "Sir, calm down, or we'll have to remove you," one guard warned. "My wife is dead," Elias's voice cracked. "He killed her. He just stood there and killed her." "Now, Mr. Ward." Hargrove straightened his white coat, not even looking up from his charts. "These situations are always tragic, but histrionics won't change the medical reality. Perhaps if she'd been more compliant with prenatal care—" "You son of a—" Elias struggled against the guard's grip. "Remove him," Gail Renshaw ordered, "and call the police if necessary. We can't have this kind of disruption." The guards began dragging Elias toward the exit. He stopped fighting, his body suddenly heavy with grief and rage, and something darker growing beneath it all. With careful movements, he reached for his wallet. The guards tensed, probably expecting him to pull out a phone to record them. But what Elias withdrew was something else entirely. A black leather credential case, falling open to reveal a golden badge, and the letters FBI, gleaming under the fluorescent lights. The stairwell door slammed behind Elias, the sound echoing like a gunshot in the confined space. Dr. Hargrove stood halfway up the stairs, one hand on the railing, caught in mid-stride. The fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across his face as he turned. "Excuse me, I have patients to—" Hargrove's words died in his throat as Elias held up his FBI credentials. "Special Agent Elias Ward, Federal Bureau of Investigation." His voice was steel wrapped in silk. "We need to discuss what just happened to my wife." The color drained from Hargrove's face. his usual mask of authority cracking. He took a half-step backward, bumping against the railing. I followed all standard protocols. Everything was documented. Who silenced the fetal monitor? Elias climbed one step, then another, each footfall deliberate. Those alarms were working fine until someone manually shut them off. That's a serious accusation. Hargrove's hand trembled slightly on the railing. I acted within established medical guidelines. Any suggestion otherwise? Answer the question, doctor. Elias kept his distance, hands loose at his sides. He didn't need to touch or threaten. His presence alone filled the stairwell like smoke. Who made the decision to ignore those warnings? Sweat beaded on Hargrove's forehead. I'll need to consult with legal counsel before discussing specific treatment decisions. Hospital policy clearly states. Hospital policy? Elias's laugh held no humor. My wife begged you for help. The nurse begged you. Even your resident knew something was wrong. But you chose to let her suffer. You're emotionally compromised. Hargrove tried to rally his usual condescension, but his voice wavered. These situations are always difficult for family members to process rationally. What I'm processing, Elias cut in, is how many other women you've killed this way, how many other unavoidable complications you've buried in paperwork. The stairwell door burst open. Gail Renshaw strode in, her heels clicking sharply on the concrete steps. Dr. Hargrove, you're needed in labor and delivery. She positioned herself between them, a human shield in an expensive suit. Mr. Ward, I'm sorry, Agent Ward. This is neither the time nor place for confrontation. There's never a right time to discuss dead black mothers in your hospital, is there, Ms. Renshaw? Elias didn't move. Just NDAs and settlements and carefully worded press releases. I understand you're grieving, she said, her professional smile firmly in place. But making scenes won't bring her back. Perhaps we should schedule a meeting with our patient advocacy team. To negotiate my silence? Elias's eyes never left Hargrove. How much is a dead wife worth in your risk management calculations? Two security guards appeared in the doorway, summoned by some silent signal. Renshaw's smile didn't waver. Please escort Agent Ward to the ground floor. He needs time to process his loss. This isn't over, Elias said quietly. It is for now. Renshaw guided Hargrove toward the upper door. Don't make this worse than it needs to be. The guards moved forward, but before they could reach him, Nurse Glenn slipped through the gap between them. She pressed a folded piece of paper into Elias's hand, her eyes fierce with purpose. I'm sorry, she whispered. So sorry. Elias felt the paper's edges bite into his palm as the guards firmly gripped his arms. They didn't rough him up. His credentials prevented that. But their message was clear. Leave or be removed. He allowed them to guide him down the stairs, his mind already cataloging details, building the framework of an investigation. The paper in his hand felt like a key, though to what door he didn't yet know. His phone vibrated as they reached the ground floor. The caller ID displayed SAC Klein. Ward, his supervisor's voice was tight with concern. I just got a call from hospital administration. What the hell are you doing? My wife died, Dana. Elias stood in the lobby, watching Hargrove and Renshaw hurry past on an upper walkway. They let her die. I know. Her tone softened slightly. And I'm sorry, but you can't investigate this. The hell I can't. You're too close. This is a clear conflict of interest. Someone needs to look into— Stand down, Elias. Steele entered her voice. That's an order. Don't make me put you on leave. The line went dead. Elias stared at his phone, feeling the walls closing in. The system was already moving to protect itself, to bury this death like all the others. A nurse wheeled a clear bassinet past him toward the elevators, likely headed to the maternity ward. Inside, A tiny form squirmed under soft blankets. His daughter. Alive because a resident finally found his courage. Too late to save Naomi, but in time to save their child. Elias fell into step beside the nurse, his badge ensuring no one questioned his presence. The elevator ride was silent except for the soft sounds of newborn breathing. The maternity ward was a study in cruel contrast. Bright colors and cheerful murals. The walls lined with photos of happy families. Proud parents holding their babies. Couples sharing tearful first moments. Moments Naomi would never have. The nurse helped him settle into a rocking chair and placed his daughter in his arms. She was perfect. Tiny fingers, dark curls, her mother's nose. She made small mewling sounds as she nestled against his chest. Elias held her close, breathing in that new baby smell, letting tears fall silently onto her blanket. In his pocket, Nurse Glenn's paper waited like a lit fuse. On the wall, a security camera watched with its unblinking eye. "I'm here," he whispered to his daughter. "Daddy's here." But Naomi wasn't, and someone would answer for that. Dawn crept through Elias's kitchen windows, painting gray shadows across the linoleum floor. The baby's cries pierced the morning silence, echoing from the nursery monitor. His daughter needed him, but for a moment, he couldn't move. His eyes were fixed on Naomi's yellow running shoes by the door, perfectly aligned, waiting for feet that would never fill them again. The baby's wails grew more insistent. Elias pushed himself up from the kitchen table, his joints stiff from sitting all night. The discharge papers from the hospital were spread across the wooden surface, each page a mockery of what happened. They shouldn't exist. No one should be discharged after dying. But here they were, delivered to his doorstep in a manila envelope. "I'm coming, baby girl," he called softly, heading to the nursery. The room still smelled of fresh paint and new furniture. Naomi had insisted on doing it herself, even 8 months pregnant. "Your daughter needs a room filled with love," she'd said, "not hired hands." He lifted his daughter from the crib, cradling her against his chest. "There you go, sweet pea. Daddy's got you." The words felt hollow without Naomi's gentle harmony beside him. He changed her diaper, warmed a bottle, and settled into the rocking chair Naomi had picked out. His phone buzzed while he was feeding the baby. An email from Gail Renshaw's office, timestamp 5:47 a.m. The subject line read, "Confidential settlement proposal. Time sensitive. They sure move fast when they're scared," he muttered to his daughter. She blinked up at him, tiny hands wrapped around the bottle. Back at the kitchen table, baby dozing in her swing, Elias spread the discharge papers out again. The timeline wasn't adding up. According to these documents, the fetal monitor showed normal readings until 12:45 a.m. But Elias remembered the alarms going off well before midnight. The nursing notes mentioned routine checks during periods when Naomi had been screaming in pain. Someone had sanitized these records, carefully editing out the evidence of neglect. But they'd made mistakes. The timestamps on medication orders didn't match the electronic system logs. Notes appeared chronologically impossible. Treatments documented before symptoms were recorded. A heavy knock at the door startled him. Through the peephole, he saw Detective Vince Malloy on his porch, looking casual in plain clothes with a paper coffee cup in hand. Elias opened the door, but blocked the entrance. "Detective, it's early. Just checking in." Malloy's smile was practiced, reasonable. "Heard there was some excitement at the hospital last night. Thought we should talk, keep things from escalating." "Nothing to talk about. My wife died because a doctor ignored her symptoms." "Look," Malloy's voice dropped, friendly but firm. "I get it. You're hurting. But Dr. Hargrove's got a 30-year record of excellence. These things happen sometimes, especially with high-risk pregnancies. Best thing for everyone is to accept reality and let the healing start." Is that what you tell all the families of his victims? Malloy's smile tightened. Careful, Agent Ward. Grief's one thing, but accusations like that can cause problems. For everyone. Behind them, the TV news anchor's voice drifted from Elias's kitchen. Respected obstetrician, Dr. Preston Hargrove expressed deep sadness today over the loss of a patient during childbirth. They both turned to watch. Hargrove stood at a podium, his face a mask of practiced concern. While we can't discuss specific cases, it's important to understand that complications can arise, particularly in patients with pre-existing risk factors. Son of a bitch, Elias breathed. He's blaming her. Take the settlement, Malloy advised. Go be a father to your little girl. Some doors, once opened, don't close so easy. After Malloy left, Elias turned his dining room wall into a timeline. Sticky notes marked every interaction, every delayed response, every dismissed warning sign. Red string connected key moments. Naomi's first complaint of pain at 11:17 p.m. Tessa's request for imaging at 11:42 p.m. Hargrove's repeated delays until the final crash at 12:53 a.m. His phone buzzed with a text from Tessa. Check your email. Sending something important. Delete after reading. The email contained scanned pages from old patient files. 2 cases, both black mothers, both died under Hargrove's care in the past year. The patterns were identical. Symptoms dismissed, care delayed, alarms ignored until too late. Elias added their names to his wall. More red string, more connections. He took out his phone again, scrolling to a number he rarely used. Assistant U.S. Attorney Lila Moreno answered on the 3rd ring. It's Ward, he said quietly. I need a meeting. Off the books. I heard about your wife. Moreno's voice was careful, measured. I'm sorry, Elias. Can you meet? A pause. The diner on 4th, 1 hour. But Elias, if this is what I think it is, there are proper channels. Channels protect the powerful. He looked at his wall of evidence. This needs to be different. After hanging up, Elias stood before his timeline. The pattern was clear now. Not just negligence or bias, but something colder, more deliberate. Each death followed the same choreography of delay and denial. Each victim fit the same profile. He uncapped a marker and wrote one word at the top of the board. Intent. The baby stirred in her swing, making small sounds of hunger or loneliness. Elias lifted her, breathing in her sweet newborn scent. I promise, he whispered against her soft hair. They won't bury this one. Not this time. The fluorescent lights in the hospital records office buzzed overhead as Elias and AUSA Lila Moreno sat at a cramped desk, surrounded by stacks of medical files. The room smelled of old paper and industrial cleaner. Let me be clear, Moreno said, her voice low and stern. We do this by the book. No cowboy moves, no breaking rules. One wrong step, and any case we build falls apart. I understand. Elias kept his voice steady, though his fingers twitched as he flipped through access logs. Do you? Moreno leaned forward. Because grief makes people reckless. And reckless gets cases thrown out. Elias was about to respond when something caught his eye. He pulled up the electronic access timestamps for Naomi's chart. Look at this. Multiple edits at 1:47 a.m., less than an hour after she died. Moreno adjusted her reading glasses. Could be routine documentation. At that hour? By IT services? Elias pointed to the user ID. Why would tech support need access right after a death? They dug deeper into the logs. Changes, deletions, entire sections rewritten. All in those crucial early morning hours when grief had kept Elias from thinking like an agent. Someone cleaned this up fast, Moreno muttered. Too fast to be standard procedure. A shadow passed the frosted glass door. Elias tensed, but it moved on. "We need to go," he said quietly. "We've been here too long." They gathered their notes and headed for the parking garage. The afternoon sun cast long shadows between the concrete pillars. Their footsteps echoed in the empty space. "Agent Ward!" a sharp voice called out. Two hospital security guards stepped from behind a support column. Both wore dark uniforms with tactical vests, overkill for hospital security. "Can I help you?" Elias kept his voice neutral. Beside him, Moreno gripped her briefcase tighter. "Need you to come with us," the larger guard said. "Ms. Renshaw wants to discuss your unauthorized access to medical records. I have proper clearance." Elias shifted his weight slightly, reading their positions. "Any concerns can be addressed through official channels." The second guard moved to flank them. "This isn't a request." "AUSA Moreno," Elias said calmly. "Please return to your car." "Elias, now, please." Moreno hesitated, then walked quickly toward her vehicle. The guards let her pass. "Last chance," the first guard said. "Come quietly." "I'm a federal agent," Elias stated. "You're interfering with an investigation." The guard's response was a hard shove that sent Elias stumbling back. But Elias had been ready. He rolled with the push, using the momentum to spin inside the guard's reach. His elbow found the man's solar plexus with precise force. As the guard doubled over, Elias trapped his extended arm and redirected him face first into the concrete pillar. The second guard rushed in. Elias dropped low, sweeping the man's legs. They hit the ground together. The guard was bigger, stronger, but Elias had years of training. He locked the man's arm in a control hold, applying pressure until the guard went limp. The whole thing took less than 20 seconds. Both guards were down, conscious but disabled. No permanent damage, no excessive force, clean and contained. Something clattered across the floor, a plastic ID badge that had fallen from the first guard's pocket. Elias picked it up. It was a contractor badge for MediaTek IT services. "Jesus Christ, Elias!" Moreno hurried back, her heels clicking on concrete. "What did you do?" "Defended myself." He held up the badge. "Look familiar?" "Same contractor ID as the system access logs." "You can't—" She stopped, staring at the badge. "Why would hospital IT be working as security?" "Because they're not IT." Elias stood, straightening his jacket. "They're fixers, brought in to clean up messes, digital and physical." "Agent Ward!" The sharp voice of SAC Dana Klein cut through the garage. She strode toward them, two FBI agents flanking her. Her face was carved from stone. "Stand down immediately." "Ma'am, your badge." She held out her hand. "Now, these men assaulted a federal agent," Moreno interjected. "That's a serious—" "What I see," Klein cut her off, "is an emotionally compromised agent who attacked hospital security after accessing restricted files without authorization." She turned to Elias. "Badge and credentials. You're suspended pending review." Elias removed his badge and ID, placed them in Klein's outstretched hand. His fingers felt cold. "Clear out your desk by end of day," Klein ordered. "And stay away from this hospital." Later that afternoon, Elias sat in his home office staring at his empty badge holder. His phone buzzed, a text from Nurse Tessa. "Monitor alarms require manual override. Two-step process. Can't be accidental." He added it to his wall of evidence, connecting it to the contractor badge and access logs. The pattern was becoming clearer. Someone had built a system for making deaths disappear, not just covering them up afterward, but ensuring they happened in the first place. Elias opened his desk drawer and placed his empty badge holder inside. The drawer closed with a soft click. He stood, looking at his timeline wall. They'd taken his badge, his authority, his official power to investigate, but they hadn't taken his training. His knowledge, his determination to expose the truth, and they hadn't taken his pain. Elias picked up his phone and began dialing numbers. He had other resources, other angles, other ways to build a case. They thought taking his badge would stop him. They were wrong. It just meant he no longer had to play by their rules. Morning sunlight streamed through the grimy windows of Pete's diner, casting long shadows across the cracked vinyl booth. Elias sat with his back to the wall, watching the door while pretending to study the laminated menu. His coffee grew cold, untouched. The bell above the door chimed. A middle-aged black couple entered. The Holloways. The woman's eyes were tired, the man's shoulders hunched with a familiar weight. Elias recognized the look of parents who'd buried a child. "Mr. and Mrs. Holloway." Elias stood, extending his hand. "Thank you for meeting me." "Call me Marcus," Mr. Holloway said, sliding into the booth. His wife, Sandra, settled beside him, her hands folded tightly in her lap. "Our daughter, Jasmine," Sandra began, then stopped, swallowing hard. She was 24. "First baby." The waitress approached, but Elias waved her away with a gentle smile. He pulled out a small notebook, keeping his movements slow and non-threatening. "Tell me about the day you took her to the hospital," he said softly. Marcus's jaw tightened. She was having pain, bad pain, not normal contractions. "We got there around 9 p.m. They made us wait." "Dr. Hargrove?" Elias asked. Sandra nodded. "Kept saying she was overreacting. Called it anxiety. Said young mothers often—" Her voice cracked. "Often exaggerate their symptoms." "His exact words?" Elias pressed gently. "Like they were scripted," Marcus growled. "Talked down to her like she was stupid. Kept saying everything was perfectly normal, and we needed to trust the process." Elias's pen moved steadily across the page. "What happened when things got worse?" Sandra's fingers twisted together. "The nurse, she knew something was wrong, kept checking the monitors, but Hargrove wouldn't listen. Said Jasmine needed to calm down and stop being dramatic. He put us in a hallway," Marcus continued, his voice hollow. "Said all the delivery rooms were full, but we saw empty ones. We saw—" He broke off, pressing his fist to his mouth. "By the time they finally moved her," Sandra whispered, "it was too late. They said it was a known complication, that sometimes these things just happen." Elias's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Need to talk. Billing irregularities. Not safe on phone." Below it, an email address signed P.S. He turned back to the Holloways. "Did they offer you a settlement?" Marcus nodded grimly. Next day, papers full of big words. Said signing would honor Jasmine's memory. "Did you sign?" "Didn't have a choice," Sandra whispered. "The funeral costs—" Elias's pen paused. "Did Detective Malloy visit you?" They both stiffened. "How did you—" Marcus started. "Told us to be reasonable," Sandra cut in. "Said fighting would only hurt more families like us." Elias added the details to his growing map of connections. The pattern was getting clearer. Identify vulnerable patients, delay care, document complications, quick settlements, police pressure. A machine built to turn deaths into statistics. His phone buzzed again. An email from Priya Shah, marked urgent. Found billing codes. Pattern of risk management classifications. Disproportionate outcomes. Need secure meeting. The diner's bell chimed. 2 men in dark jackets entered, scanning the room. Elias recognized the predatory posture of hired muscle. "We should wrap up," he said quietly. "Different exits. Don't look back." The Holloways slipped out the side door while Elias left cash on the table. He exited through the kitchen, nodding thanks to the cook who'd been watching the scene unfold. That evening, Elias sat in his home office, connecting threads on his evidence board. Hospital records, witness statements, billing codes. pieces of a puzzle showing systematic neglect, masked by paperwork. His son slept in the bassinet beside his desk. A sharp crack outside jerked him alert. Through the window, he caught the flash of movement near Naomi's car, still parked in the driveway where she'd left it that last night. The smell hit him first. Gasoline. Elias burst through the front door as a figure in dark clothes raised a lighter. He crossed the distance in 3 strides, tackling the person before the flame could drop. They hit the concrete hard. The attacker was strong, trained. An elbow caught Elias's ribs. A knee drove up toward his groin. But Elias had fury on his side, controlled, focused rage that made his strikes precise and brutal. They grappled on the damp grass. Elias locked the attacker's arm, twisted until something popped. A pained grunt, male. The man bucked, trying to throw Elias off. His jacket rode up, revealing a familiar ID card clipped to his belt. Municipal Maintenance Department. Headlights swept the scene as a police cruiser pulled up. Detective Malloy stepped out, taking his time. "Everything all right here, Agent Ward?" Malloy's voice dripped false concern. Neighbors reported a disturbance. "This man was attempting arson," Elias said, maintaining his hold. "I caught him trying to torch my wife's car. Looks to me like you're assaulting a city worker." Malloy smiled thinly. "Let him up. You're going to ignore the gas can right there?" "What gas can?" Malloy kicked the container under a bush. "You're making enemies, Ward. Dangerous ones. Be smart. Focus on your kid instead of chasing ghosts." The attacker scrambled up when Elias released him, limping to a dark SUV that had appeared silently at the curb. Malloy watched him go, then turned back to Elias. "Next time we get called out here," he said softly, "things might not end so clean." After they left, Elias installed security cameras at every corner of the house. He added motion sensors, upgraded the locks, reinforced the windows. In his son's room, he mounted a camera with a direct feed to his phone. That night, he lay on the floor beside the crib, his service weapon within reach. Above him, his son slept peacefully, unaware of the forces gathering around them, unaware that his father was building a wall of evidence and surveillance to protect him from the people who'd taken his mother. Elias touched the crib bars gently, feeling the smooth wood beneath his fingers. "I've got you," he whispered. "They won't hurt anyone else. I promise." The abandoned storage facility loomed against the midnight sky, a hulking shadow of corrugated metal and broken windows. Elias pulled his car behind a rusted shipping container, cutting the engine. His breath fogged in the cold air as he waited, watching. A familiar figure emerged from the darkness. Ray "Razor" Delaney, his leather jacket collar turned up against the wind. The former criminal informant moved with the cautious grace of someone used to looking over his shoulder. "You're a hard man to find these days, Fed," Razor said, keeping his distance until he'd checked the surroundings. "Not a Fed right now," Elias replied. "Badge is suspended." Razor's laugh was sharp and humorless. "That's what makes this interesting. You're calling in favors when you got nothing to trade." "I've still got friends in place. Protection's available if the information's good." "Protection?" Razor shook his head. "Man, you don't even know what you're poking at. These people, they've got reach you wouldn't believe." Elias stepped closer, his voice low and intense. "They killed my wife, Razor, while I watched. Tell me what you know." Something in his tone made Razor study him more carefully. After a long moment, the informant nodded. "Follow me. But if anyone asks, we never had this conversation." They wound through a maze of storage units until they reached a nondescript door marked Maintenance. Inside, ancient fluorescent lights flickered over rows of servers humming in climate-controlled racks. "Hospital's dirty little secret," Razor explained, gesturing at the equipment. "When they need records to disappear during routine migrations, This is where the real data sits. I did some contract work for their IT department, off the books, of course. Who has access? That's the beautiful part, Razor said, pulling out his phone. They think they wiped the login records, but... He showed Elias a screenshot of access timestamps. I keep backups. See these entries? Right after your wife. Show me everything, Elias interrupted. For the next hour, Razor walked him through the hospital's shadow system, how records were altered, where the originals were stored, which administrators had privileged access. Names and times matched Elias's timeline perfectly. This is enough to start building a case, Elias said, but I need copies. Already ahead of you. Razor handed over a small hard drive. But listen, this goes beyond just the hospital. I've seen municipal accounts, police records, judges' signatures. They've got a whole network. I can protect you, Elias promised. I may be suspended, but I've got an AUSA who... His phone buzzed. A text from Moreno. Limited surveillance warrant approved. 48 hours only. Use it wisely. Before he could respond, another message flashed across his screen. This one from an unknown number. Nurse Glenn found unconscious at home. Memorial Hospital ER. I have to go, Elias said sharply. Stay low. I'll contact you through the usual channels. Watch your back, Razor called after him. They don't like loose ends. Elias broke every speed limit getting to Memorial. He found Tessa Glenn in the ER, bruised and barely conscious. Her house had been robbed. Nothing taken except her phone and laptop. Wasn't. Random, she managed to whisper when she saw him. Two men. Knew exactly what they wanted. Did you recognize them? She tried to shake her head, but winced. Professional. Careful. Not to... Her eyes fluttered closed as the morphine took hold. Detective Malloy was already there, leaning against the nurse's station with calculated casualness. Terrible thing, he drawled when he saw Elias. City's getting dangerous. Even nice neighborhoods aren't safe anymore. Cut the act, Elias growled. We both know what this is. Careful, Ward. Malloy's friendly mask slipped for just a moment. Suspended agents shouldn't interfere with active investigations. Bad things happen when people don't mind their own business. Is that what happened to my wife? She didn't mind her own business? Your wife had complications. Tragic, but natural. Unlike some other recent events. Malloy straightened his jacket. Think about your kid, Ward. Some losses you can't come back from. Elias watched him leave, fury burning cold in his chest. His phone buzzed again. Moreno. I've got 48 hours of surveillance authorization, she said without preamble. That's it. Make it count. I need more time. You need to be careful, she countered. They're sending messages, Elias. First the car, now Nurse Glenn. They're escalating. Then we need to move faster. Elias described what Razor had shown him. The evidence is there, Lila. We just need to get to it legally. Evidence won't help if you're dead. She paused. Or if someone else gets hurt because you pushed too hard. Elias looked through the window at Tessa's unconscious form. She'd tried to help, to do the right thing, just like Naomi had tried to advocate for herself. The system's response was the same. Swift, brutal silencing. No one else gets hurt, he said quietly. I swear it. How can you promise that? Because I'm done playing by their rules. He touched the hard drive in his pocket. They want to send messages? Fine. Let's send one back. Elias, 48 hours, he cut her off. That's all I need. Have a team ready. He ended the call and went back into Tessa's room. A nurse was adjusting her IV, checking the bruises blossoming across her face and neck. I'm sorry, he whispered to her still form. This ends now. No one else pays for their crimes. Through the window, dawn was breaking over the city. Somewhere in that gray light, Hargrove was probably sleeping peacefully. Malloy was filing false reports, and hospital administrators were crafting their next cover-up. They thought fear and violence would protect their system forever. They were wrong. In 48 hours, Elias would prove it. He just hoped the price wouldn't be paid in more innocent blood. The marble floors of the federal courthouse echoed with each of Elias's steps. Morning light streamed through tall windows, casting long shadows across the empty hallway where AUSA Leila Moreno had spread documents across a wooden bench. "These numbers don't lie," Priya Shah whispered, her fingers trembling as she pointed to highlighted sections in the financial records. "See these transfers? Every time there's a maternal death under Hargrove, donations flow through shell companies into Judge Pritchard's preferred charities." Moreno nodded, making notes. "And the timing matches perfectly with Detective Malloy's overtime approvals and special assignments. Plus this," Priya added, pulling out another spreadsheet. "Gail Renshaw gets consulting fees from the same shell companies. It's all connected. The delays, the deaths, the cover-ups. They're profiting from it." Elias studied the paper trail they'd assembled. "How many deaths are we talking about?" "I've confirmed 8 over 3 years, Priya said. "All black or brown mothers. All with similar patterns of delayed care and altered records." 8 families, Elias breathed, thinking of Naomi. 8 lives they threw away. Moreno began drafting subpoenas, her pen moving with fierce determination. "We'll hit them all at once. Hospital records, financial documents, surveillance footage, everything. No warning, no time to hide evidence." For the first time in weeks, Elias felt hope stirring. The pieces were finally coming together. They had proof of the conspiracy, documentation of the money trail, witnesses ready to testify. His phone buzzed. A news alert. The hope died as he read the hospital's press release. "Due to scheduled system upgrades and server migration, some surveillance footage from the past quarter may be temporarily unavailable." "They're destroying evidence," he growled, showing Moreno the screen. "We expected this," she said. "That's why we—" His phone buzzed again. Another news alert, this one making his hands shake. "Sources reveal toxicology report shows substances in deceased mother's system." "That's a lie," he snarled. "Naomi never. They're trying to poison her reputation." "They're scared," Priya said quietly. "They know we're close." Moreno's phone rang. Her face darkened as she listened. "What do you mean?" Challenged. "The subpoenas are properly—" She paced the hallway, arguing with someone. "No, Your Honor, there's no conflict of—" "Yes, I understand, but—" She ended the call, looking grim. "Judge Pritchard is blocking our subpoenas. Claims there's insufficient cause and potential conflicts of interest due to your suspension." "He's part of it," Elias said. "We have the proof right here. Proof we can't use until we get those subpoenas approved. And every judge we approach will know Pritchard's already denied us." Priya gathered her papers with shaking hands. "I should go. If they find out I'm talking to you—" "We'll protect you," Moreno assured her. "Like you protected Nurse Glenn?" Priya's voice was bitter. "They put her in the hospital for trying to help. What do you think they'll do to me?" Neither Elias nor Moreno had an answer. They watched her hurry away, looking over her shoulder with each step. An hour later, Elias stood at Naomi's grave. The morning's hope had crumbled to ashes in his mouth. Fresh flowers marked where she lay. Roses from her mother, who still called daily to check on the baby. "I'm sorry," he whispered to the stone. "They're burying the truth, just like they buried you. Making you look guilty when you were the victim." Wind rustled through nearby trees. In the distance, a groundskeeper's lawnmower droned. "I tried doing this the right way," he continued, "following procedures, respecting the system. But they own the system. They use it like a weapon." He touched the cold marble. "You deserved better. Those other mothers deserved better. And that smug bastard Hargrove is still out there, still practicing, still deciding who lives and dies based on the color of their skin. A plan began forming in his mind. Dangerous, probably illegal, but they'd left him no choice. He pulled out his phone and called Moreno. "I need a favor." "Elias, just listen. We know Hargrove's pattern. We know how he operates. What if we gave him another chance to show his true colors?" "What are you suggesting?" "A decoy patient. Someone presenting with the same symptoms Naomi had. Someone wearing a wire. That's entrapment. It's giving him rope to hang himself. He's arrogant, Lila. He thinks he's untouchable. Put another black woman in front of him with the same complaints, and he'll do exactly what he did to Naomi." "Even if I wanted to help," Moreno said, "we'd need authorization for any recording. And after Pritchard's ruling, then we get creative. Find a sympathetic judge. Call in favors. Something." His voice hardened. "Because right now, he's in that hospital, probably getting ready to kill someone else's wife, someone else's mother. And we're letting it happen." Silence stretched between them. Finally, Moreno sighed. "Give me 24 hours. But Elias, if we do this, it has to be perfect. By the book. One mistake, and they'll bury everything. They already tried burying Naomi. They won't bury the truth." He ended the call and looked at the grave one last time. Hargrove thought his position and connections made him invulnerable. That same arrogance would be his downfall. All they had to do was give him another chance to show who he really was. The lawnmower's drone faded. Wind scattered petals from Naomi's roses across the grass. Somewhere in the city, Hargrove was probably reviewing patient files, deciding whose pain mattered and whose didn't. Soon, he'd have another chance to make that choice. And this time, every word, every dismissal, every cruel calculation would be recorded. The surveillance van's air conditioning hummed as Elias watched Simone Brooks approach the hospital entrance through multiple camera feeds. She moved with practiced precision, one hand pressed against her stomach, her face showing just the right amount of distress. "Audio check." Moreno's voice crackled through his earpiece. "Receiving clearly," he responded, adjusting the volume. Every rustle from the tiny microphone hidden in Simone's clothing came through with crystal clarity. Simone pushed through the ER doors, her performance flawless. Not too dramatic, not too subtle. Just a worried pregnant woman seeking help. Exactly like Naomi had been. The waiting room buzzed with typical afternoon chaos. A child wailed. Someone coughed. Phones rang at the intake desk. "I need help," Simone told the triage nurse, her voice trembling perfectly. "Something's wrong. The pain, it's not normal." Elias's hands tightened on the monitoring equipment. The same words, the same fear. He forced himself to breathe. "Blood pressure's elevated," a nurse noted. 160/95. Just like Naomi's had been. They wheeled Simone to an exam area. Through her hidden microphone, Elias heard everything. The beep of monitors, the squeak of rubber-soled shoes, the murmur of voices discussing which doctor was on rotation. "Dr. Hargrove's handling OB emergencies today," someone said. "Patient presenting with severe abdominal pain at 32 weeks, another voice reported. Complaining of vision changes and dizziness." Elias glanced at Moreno, who was transcribing every word. They'd chosen the symptoms carefully, matching Naomi's case while ensuring Simone wasn't actually at risk. Dr. Aidan Park appeared first, the resident who'd been there the night Naomi died. His hesitation was visible even through the grainy security feed. "Let's get a full workup," Park said, his voice clearer now. "BP's concerning. We should—" Now, Hargrove's familiar voice cut in. "Let's not overreact. Elias's jaw clenched as Hargrove swept into view, radiating the same dismissive confidence he'd shown with Naomi. "Good afternoon," Hargrove said to Simone. "I understand you're feeling anxious?" "The pain," Simone said. "It's like something's tearing. And I can't see right. Everything's blurry." "Mm-hmm." Hargrove's tone dripped condescension. "First pregnancy?" "Yes. But this isn't normal. Something's wrong." "Pain tolerance varies significantly among different demographics," Hargrove said. "What you're experiencing is likely stress-related." In the van, Moreno's pen scratched rapidly across her notepad. Every word was another nail in Hargrove's coffin. "Her pressure's still climbing," Park interjected. "Protocol suggests—" "Thank you, Dr. Park," Hargrove cut him off. "I believe I can assess the situation." Gail Renshaw materialized at the nurses' station, her presence a silent warning to the staff. Through various cameras, Elias watched her subtle gestures, directing traffic, managing optics, protecting the machine. "Please," Simone said, "can't you do some tests? An ultrasound, maybe?" "Let's not waste resources," Hargrove replied. "Some quiet rest will help more than unnecessary imaging." Park shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, given the symptoms and vitals, we should at least—" "Dr. Park," Hargrove's voice hardened, "perhaps you need a refresher on proper assessment procedures? We can't order expensive tests every time someone gets emotional." The exchange crackled through their headsets with perfect clarity. Moreno underlined something in her notes. "BP 170 over 100 now," a nurse called out. Park straightened his spine. "With respect, Dr. Hargrove, elevated pressure combined with vision changes meets criteria for immediate evaluation. I'm ordering a protein test and ultrasound." "Absolutely not," Hargrove snapped. "I won't have my authority questioned by—" "It's protocol," Park insisted, louder now. "I'm documenting my recommendation." The word documenting changed Hargrove's demeanor instantly. He knew the power of paper trails. "Fine," he said tightly. "Order your tests. Waste time and resources. But note that I consider this an overreaction to standard discomfort." In the van, Moreno looked up from her notes. He's repeating the exact pattern. Dismissing symptoms, rejecting tests, documenting his objections to cover himself, while pushing the racist subtext that black women exaggerate pain, Elias added grimly. Through the monitors, they watched Park efficiently arrange the tests he'd demanded. Simone remained perfectly in character, worried but cooperative, insistent but not combative. "Your pressure's still elevated," Park told her, "but the initial tests look reassuring. We'll monitor you closely." "Such drama for nothing," Hargrove commented, loud enough for the microphone to catch. "As I said, anxiety presents differently in certain populations. Perhaps some education on proper prenatal care would be beneficial?" The condescension in his voice made Elias's hands curl into fists, but the rage was tempered by satisfaction. Every word was another piece of evidence. "Patient seems stable," Park said carefully, "but I'm keeping her for observation." "On your head be it," Hargrove replied. "Document that I advised against unnecessary admission." "Oh, I'll document everything," Park assured him, his meaning clear to everyone but Hargrove. Gail Renshaw drifted closer, her practiced smile masking concern. "Dr. Hargrove, may I have a word about resource allocation?" "Of course," Hargrove replied. "Someone needs to maintain standards around here." Their voices faded as they moved away from Simone's bed, but the microphone caught their retreating conversation. These people need to learn they can't demand special treatment every time they— Moreno clicked her pen decisively and turned to Elias. Her eyes were hard with certainty. "He just confessed," she said quietly. "Not just to this, to everything. The pattern, the prejudice, the deliberate denial of care." We've got him. The garage light cast harsh shadows across the evidence wall as Elias gently swayed, his sleeping child nestled against his chest. Hargrove's recorded voice played through a small speaker, each word dripping with casual cruelty. These people need to learn. They can't demand special treatment. Elias pressed a button, rewinding the clip. He'd listened to it 17 times now, memorizing every inflection, every pause that revealed the doctor's true nature. The wall before him was a spider's web of connections, time-stamped photos, financial records, transcribed threats. Red string linked key events, forming a noose that would finally end Hargrove's reign of negligence. The baby stirred, tiny fingers clutching Elias's shirt. He adjusted the blanket, remembering how Naomi used to hum while folding these same soft fabrics, preparing for a future that Hargrove stole. His phone buzzed. Moreno's text was brief. Warrants drafted. Filing at dawn. A car door slammed outside. Through the garage window, Elias spotted Detective Malloy's unmarked Crown Victoria idling at the curb. He secured his child in the portable crib tucked behind his desk and switched off the audio playback. The doorbell rang. Elias took his time answering, letting Malloy stew in the cold night air. "Evening, Agent Ward," Malloy said when the door finally opened. His smile was practiced, professional, the kind that never reached his eyes. "Got a minute to chat?" "No warrant, no chat," Elias replied flatly. "Come on now." Malloy's voice stayed friendly, but his stance shifted subtly. A cop's instinct to establish dominance. "Just looking out for your interests here. Professional courtesy." "There's nothing professional about this visit." "Listen." Malloy stepped closer, dropping the pretense. "You're pushing buttons that don't need pushing. Making waves that could drown more than just Hargrove. Be smart. Think about your kid." Elias felt ice crystallize in his veins. "Are you threatening my child, Detective?" "Course not." Malloy spread his hands. "Just saying life's unpredictable. Accidents happen. Sometimes something permanent changes everything. Would be a shame if your crusade left that baby without both parents." Elias didn't blink. "You're officially notified that this conversation is being recorded as evidence of attempted witness intimidation under Federal Statute 18 U.S.C., paragraph 15-12. Would you like to revise your statement?" Malloy's smile vanished. "You think you're clever? You think your badge protects you? This is bigger than you understand." "No," Elias said quietly. "It's exactly as big as I understand. That's what terrifies you." Malloy retreated to his car without another word. Elias watched until the taillights disappeared around the corner, then checked his home's security feeds. All cameras operational. All angles covered. His phone buzzed again. This time it was Moreno, her voice tight with controlled anger. "Pritchard just issued an emergency injunction. He's blocking our subpoenas on procedural grounds." "How long?" 3 days minimum for a hearing. Meanwhile, Renshaw's legal team is burying us in paperwork. Motion to dismiss, motion to suppress, motion to seal. They're trying to drown us in red tape until the pressure fades. Elias looked at his evidence wall. They're scared. They should be. But they're also connected. Each delay gives them time to bury evidence deeper. Then we change the game. Elias pulled out his other phone, the one tied directly to the bureau. "Time to call Klein." SAC Dana Klein answered on the second ring. "Ward, you're still suspended. I need 5 minutes. After that, you can extend my suspension or arrest me. Your choice." A long pause. "Talk fast." Elias laid it out methodically. The pattern of deaths, the financial connections, the coordinated cover-up. He detailed Malloy's threat, Pritchard's obstruction, Renshaw's legal barricade. Finally, he played Hargrove's recorded confession. This isn't just about Naomi anymore, he finished. It's about a system that kills black mothers for profit and buries anyone who objects. The Bureau can't look away without becoming complicit. The silence stretched. Elias could almost hear Klein weighing career preservation against moral certainty. "Send me everything," she said finally. "Every recording, every document, every connection. I'll take it upstairs. Federal jurisdiction, no local involvement. But Ward, if you're wrong about any of this..." "I'm not wrong, and I have backups of everything." "Of course you do," Klein sighed. "Stay put. Wait for authorization. Do not engage anyone until we move. Understood?" "Understood." Elias ended the call and turned back to his evidence wall. He photographed every document, scanned every note, uploaded every recording to secure servers. Multiple copies, multiple locations. No single point of failure. The baby whimpered softly. Elias lifted his child, breathing in that perfect newborn scent. "I know, little one," he whispered. "I miss her too. But tomorrow we start making it right." He settled into the old rocking chair Naomi had chosen, watching security feeds while his child slept. Outside, the night grew deeper. But Elias didn't sleep. He simply rocked and waited, and remembered Naomi's smile as dawn crept closer. Every few minutes, his phone lit up with more notifications. Renshaw's lawyers filing motions, Malloy's car circling the block, Pritchard's office requesting urgent meetings with federal supervisors. The system was scrambling, desperate to maintain control. Let them scramble, Elias thought. The truth was already loose. No amount of legal papers or backroom deals could cage it again. The armored vans hummed in the pre-dawn darkness, their black shapes lined up like waiting predators. Condensation purled on bulletproof glass as agents moved with practiced efficiency, checking gear and synchronizing communications. The staging area, a converted warehouse lot, bristled with tactical equipment and federal authority. SAC Dana Klein stood straight-backed near the command vehicle, her expression carved from stone. When Elias approached, she held out his badge without ceremony. "Agent Ward," she said formally, "you are hereby reinstated to active duty, effective immediately." She paused, then added in a lower voice, "The Bureau failed you. We should have acted sooner." Elias accepted his credentials, the familiar weight settling against his chest like armor. "Thank you, ma'am." "Don't thank me." Klein's eyes hardened. "Make it count." Inside the command vehicle, Elias's evidence board had been recreated digitally across multiple screens. Red markers highlighted target locations while timestamps scrolled past in real time. AUSA Moreno sat at the communications station, coordinating with support teams. "Teams are in position," she reported, not looking up from her monitors. "Priya's feeding us server locations now." Elias studied the tactical overlay. 7 primary targets: the hospital's off-site storage facility, 3 billing vendor offices, the administration building, and personal residences belonging to Hargrove and Renshaw. Each location represented a piece of the puzzle they'd fought so hard to assemble. "All teams sound off," Klein commanded. The responses came rapid-fire. "Alpha Team, ready at storage facility. Bravo Team, positioned at Billing Office 1. Charlie Team, covering hospital approach. Delta Team..." Elias watched the pieces align, remembering all the nights he'd spent connecting these same dots while his child slept nearby. Now the full weight of federal law enforcement stood ready to validate every conclusion, every suspicion, every truth he'd protected. Priya Shah's voice crackled through secure channels. Primary server room confirmed in sub-basement. Backup arrays in offices 3 and 4. They're running constant purge cycles, trying to wipe everything. Too late for that. Moreno muttered, typing commands. Mirroring programs are already in place. Every deletion creates a backup we can track. The first rays of sunrise painted the sky in shades of promise as Klein gave the execute order. Across the city, federal agents moved with synchronized purpose. Doors burst open. Warrants were served. Evidence was secured. Live feeds filled the command screens. At the storage facility, agents discovered recently shredded documents, but the pieces were salvageable. In the billing offices, computers whirred with active deletion programs that only preserved more proof of guilt. At Renshaw's house, a hastily lit fire in the backyard still smoldered, half-burned papers containing patient names fluttering in the morning breeze. First footage recovery coming in, announced a tech specialist. Timestamp matches Nurse Glenn's note exactly. Elias leaned forward as hospital security footage filled the main screen. The images were crystal clear. Hargrove manually silencing alarms, dismissing staff concerns, delaying critical care. Each frame validated Tessa's courage in speaking up, each second of video transforming memory into evidence. "Got the access logs?" another analyst called out. Multiple manual overrides of monitoring equipment, all tied to Hargrove's credentials. Pattern spans 3 years, focuses on minority patients, correlates with billing adjustments afterward. More data poured in. Financial records showed payments flowing between shell companies tied to hospital administrators and local officials. Email chains revealed careful coordination to bury complaints and silence witnesses. Everything Elias had suspected, everything he'd pieced together through grief and determination, was being confirmed in high-resolution detail. "Sir," a junior agent approached with a tablet. "You should see this." The screen showed security footage from Tessa Glenn's robbery. Clear images of 2 men, one wearing a contractor badge identical to those found in the hospital parking garage, breaking in and attacking her. No theft, just violence meant to silence. "Facial recognition is already running," the agent said. "We've identified one suspect as former police, currently employed by a security firm contracted to the hospital." Elias nodded, unsurprised. The system protected itself through layers of deniable connections, until those layers were stripped away. "Teams report evidence secured at all primary locations," Klein announced. "No deletions successful. No data lost." Moreno looked up from her station, a fierce satisfaction in her eyes. They really thought they could bury this. All of it. Everyone they hurt, everyone they silenced. "They got used to power," Elias said quietly. "Started believing their own lies." The command vehicle hummed with activity as data streams converged into an irrefutable narrative. Patient records, security footage, financial transactions, communication logs, each piece strengthened the others, creating a foundation too solid to shake. "Hospital Administrator Renshaw is in custody," reported Charlie Team. "No resistance. Found her attempting to access sealed files in her office. Billing office principals detained," added Bravo Team. "Multiple servers seized. Chain of custody maintained." Elias watched the feeds, feeling a weight lift from his chest with each confirmation. The truth wasn't fragile anymore. It wasn't trapped in his grieving memories or buried in manipulated records. It was documented, duplicated, distributed across secure federal servers. They couldn't make it disappear. A priority alert flashed across the main screen. Moreno straightened in her chair, hand pressed to her earpiece. "Confirmation from hospital security," she announced. "Dr. Preston Hargrove has been located. He's in the East Wing, 3rd floor, conducting morning rounds." The room stilled. Every eye turned to Elias. "He doesn't know yet," Klein said softly. "He's still playing doctor, still thinking he's untouchable." Sunlight streamed through the hospital's glass entrance, casting long shadows across the busy lobby. Patients filled plastic chairs, flipping through old magazines and checking phones. A local news crew had already set up near the information desk, their camera trained on the entrance, a tip about breaking developments, bringing them like sharks to blood in the water. The first hint something was different came from the security guards. They straightened suddenly, hands dropping to radios that had gone mysteriously silent. Then the front doors swung wide. Federal agents moved in smooth formation, badges displayed, purpose radiating from every step. No sirens, no shouting, no dramatics, just the quiet authority of justice finally arriving. Patients looked up from their phones, conversations dying mid-sentence as more agents appeared from side entrances, securing exits with practiced efficiency. On the third floor, Dr. Preston Hargrove stood in an examination room, reviewing a chart with the same dismissive confidence he'd always wielded. His white coat was pristine, his posture perfect, his entire being radiating the untouchable superiority that had let him decide who deserved care and who could wait. As I was saying, he told his patient, these concerns seem rather premature. The door opened. 2 agents in tactical gear stepped in, followed by 3 in suits. Badge flashes caught the fluorescent light. Dr. Preston Hargrove, the lead agent announced, you are under arrest. Hargrove's face flickered between expressions, confusion, indignation, the beginning of fear. This is absurd. Do you have any idea who I am? Yes, sir. We know exactly who you are. The agent moved forward with cuffs ready. You have the right to remain silent. I demand to speak to my attorney. Hargrove's voice rose, cracking slightly. This is harassment. I'm a respected physician. The cuffs snapped shut with metallic finality. Down the hall, phones recorded as the famous doctor was led past shocked nurses and wide-eyed residents. Someone whispered, "Is this real?" In her top-floor office, Gail Renshaw was mid-sentence in a damage control meeting when her door burst open. Her practiced administrator's smile froze as agents entered. Ms. Renshaw, federal agents, you're under arrest for conspiracy, evidence tampering, and obstruction of justice. This is a mistake, she said automatically, PR training kicking in. Everything was handled according to protocol. But her calm cracked as cuffs appeared. Real panic flooded her face, the kind that came from knowing exactly how much evidence they must have found. Her heels clicked arrhythmically as agents escorted her past the executive suite where she'd orchestrated so many cover-ups. Across town, Detective Vince Malloy stepped out of the precinct, adjusting his jacket with the casual confidence of a man who owned his corner of the world. He made it 3 steps before federal agents surrounded him. Detective Malloy, you're under arrest for conspiracy and corruption under color of authority. Come on, guys, he tried, friendly mask slipping. We can work this out. Whatever you think happened. The cuffs ended his negotiation. Officers he'd commanded watched from the station steps as he was led to a waiting vehicle, power evaporating like morning dew. Back in the hospital lobby, staff gathered in clusters, whispering as more arrests followed. IT managers who'd deleted footage, administrators who'd buried complaints, security personnel who'd threatened witnesses. The entire machinery of silence was being dismantled in broad daylight. Elias Ward stood near the information desk, badge visible on his belt, saying nothing. His presence was statement enough. Every person led past in cuffs represented a piece of the system that had failed Naomi, failed so many others, and assumed they'd never face consequences. Dr. Hargrove emerged from the elevator between 2 agents, his perfect posture now rigid with shock. He scanned the lobby desperately, looking for allies, for escape, for anyone who might still shield him. Then, his eyes found Elias. Recognition hit like a physical blow. Hargrove's steps faltered as understanding dawned. not just of who Elias was, but of the full scope of what his arrogance had ignored. Not just a grieving husband, but a federal agent. Not just one death, but a pattern of negligence now documented in federal evidence. Not just a tragedy to be buried, but justice that had been gathering strength in silence. Reporters surged forward, shouting questions. Cameras flashed. But Hargrove couldn't look away from Elias, from the quiet strength that had systematically dismantled his world of privilege and protection. In that moment, the doctor finally felt what his victims had felt. Powerless, unheard, at the mercy of forces he couldn't control. Elias met his gaze steadily, badge gleaming, neither triumphant nor angry. He didn't need words. The evidence would speak. The truth would speak. Every silenced voice would finally be heard. The hospital's automatic doors slid open with a soft hiss. Hargrove tried one last time to summon his authority, to demand rights, to invoke lawyers, to threaten consequences. But his voice shrank under the weight of reality. His reputation couldn't save him. His connections couldn't hide him. His power was paper-thin, and it was burning away in the morning light. As agents guided Hargrove toward the waiting vehicle, his eyes locked on Elias one final time. In that gaze was the desperate realization of a man who'd thought himself untouchable, finally understanding the price of his choices. The doors closed behind him with quiet finality, separating him forever from the kingdom of impunity he'd built on others' pain. The federal courtroom hummed with tension. Morning light filtered through tall windows, casting long shadows across polished wood and stern faces. Elias sat directly behind AUSA Leila Moreno's table, his posture rigid, his eyes fixed on the proceedings. Around him, the gallery was packed with families, mothers, fathers, children who'd lost loved ones to a system that had treated their pain as inconvenient. Dr. Preston Hargrove sat at the defense table, his once immaculate appearance showing signs of strain. His custom suits had been replaced by department store clothing that seemed to hang wrong on his frame. Next to him, his high-priced attorney shuffled papers with increasing desperation. "The United States calls Priya Shah," Moreno announced, her voice clear and measured. Priya approached the witness stand, her steps careful but determined. After being sworn in, she settled into the chair, adjusting her glasses with steady hands. "Ms. Shah, please explain your role at Metropolitan General Hospital," Moreno began. "I was a senior compliance accountant in charge of reviewing billing patterns and risk management metrics." Priya's voice carried clearly, her professional demeanor masking the fear she'd lived with for months. "And what irregularities did you discover regarding Dr. Hargrove's department?" "We tracked something called optimization delays, periods where high-risk patients were held without escalated care. The delays correlated directly with insurance status and race." Priya gestured to charts displayed on the courtroom screen. Black mothers were 3 times more likely to experience these delays. The defense attorney stood. "Objection, speculation." "Overruled," the judge responded. "The witness is stating documented facts." Moreno continued methodically. "What happened when you reported these findings?" "Ms. Renshaw instructed me to recategorize the delays as patient-initiated postponements. When I refused, I was transferred to accounts receivable." In the gallery, several people nodded grimly. They'd lived these statistics personally. The evidence mounted steadily throughout the morning. Hospital footage, recovered from backup servers, showed Hargrove repeatedly dismissing urgent symptoms. Audio recordings captured his casual cruelty. The same phrases repeated with different patients, always minimizing, always delaying. "The pain can't be that severe," his voice echoed through the courtroom speakers. "These people always exaggerate." Elias's jaw tightened at the word "these." In the gallery, A woman wiped tears as she recognized the same language used before her sister died. The prosecution displayed financial records linking Judge Harold Pritchard to hospital donations, carefully timed gifts following dismissed complaints. News of Pritchard's resignation and frozen accounts had broken that morning, another pillar of protection crumbling. During a brief recess, Moreno conferred with Elias near the water fountain. "Renshaw's plea deal is final," she murmured. "She'll testify about the cover-up protocols tomorrow." Elias nodded. Gail Renshaw had folded quickly once faced with the evidence, her carefully maintained facade shattering under the weight of federal charges. Her testimony would detail years of systematic discrimination disguised as policy. When court resumed, Detective Malloy's recorded phone calls played, casual conversations about managing investigations, keeping certain complaints from causing problems. His voice was friendly, reasonable, and utterly damning. Dr. Hargrove's defense strategy deteriorated visibly as each piece of evidence landed. His lawyer tried arguing about context, about medical judgment, about the pressures of a busy hospital. But there was no explaining away the pattern captured in cold data and colder recordings. A young resident testified about being ordered to falsify charts. A billing specialist detailed how delays were coded to maximize insurance payments. Each witness added another brick to the wall of evidence, making it impossible to dismiss these deaths as isolated incidents or unfortunate accidents. The families in the gallery sat straight-backed through it all. Some held photos of loved ones lost. Others clutched hands or notebooks where they'd documented their own battles with the system. They'd been told for years that their experiences weren't real, that their pain wasn't valid, that their losses were somehow their fault. Now they watched as the truth was finally acknowledged in a court of law. Every piece of evidence validated what they'd known, that their loved ones had deserved care, had deserved dignity, had deserved to live. Hargrove seemed to shrink as the day progressed. His confident smirk faded. His whispered conferences with his attorney grew more agitated. The evidence he couldn't charm or intimidate away kept building, kept crushing the foundations of his power. The charges stacked like stones. Multiple civil rights violations, each carrying heavy federal penalties. Fraud counts tied to falsified records and manipulated billing. Obstruction of justice for the coordinated cover-ups. Conspiracy resulting in death. The heaviest charge, supported by years of documented pattern and practice. Late in the afternoon, the prosecution displayed Naomi's final vital signs alongside the silenced monitor logs. The technical evidence was clear, but it was the human cost that filled the courtroom. The loss of a mother, a wife, a future deliberately denied. Elias watched it all with the same controlled expression he'd maintained for months. But his hands, folded in his lap, showed white knuckles as the full scope of the conspiracy was laid bare. The judge reviewed the evidence summary with stern attention. Her eyes moved between the documents and Hargrove, between the data and the families whose lives it represented. When she looked up, her decision was written in her expression. Given the overwhelming evidence presented, this court will proceed to sentencing as scheduled. She consulted her calendar. Sentencing hearing is set for 2 weeks from today. The defendant will remain in custody until that time. As the words settled across the courtroom, Elias felt something tight in his chest begin to loosen. For the first time since Naomi's death, he took a full, deep breath. The air tasted different. Not sweet, not triumphant, but heavy with the weight of truth finally spoken aloud. Spring sunlight bathed the new community clinic's facade, warming the crisp morning air. A bright banner stretched across the entrance, its letters bold and dignified. Naomi Ward Maternal Care Initiative. The crowd gathered on the lawn represented a cross-section of the community. Medical professionals, local families, activists, and officials who'd fought for change. Nurse Tessa Glenn sat in a wheelchair near the podium, still recovering from her attack, but radiating quiet strength. Her hands rested on the ceremonial ribbon in her lap, fingers tracing the silk fabric. The past months had left visible marks, a slight tremor in her movements, careful turns of her head, but her eyes remained sharp and determined. Dr. Aidan Park stood among the new clinic staff, his white coat pristine, his posture reflecting both pride and humility. The young resident who'd once hesitated under Hargrove's shadow had found his voice. He'd testified at the trial, describing the culture of fear that had prevented junior staff from challenging dangerous decisions. Now he would help build something different. Federal officials clustered near the steps, their presence a reminder of how change had finally come. The consent decrees they carried weren't just paper, they were enforced promises. Every hospital in the region would face new protocols, new oversight, new consequences for discrimination. Elias Ward stood slightly apart from the crowd, his child secure in his arms. The baby had grown in the months since the trial, healthy and strong despite the trauma of their first moments together. Watching the gathering, Elias felt the familiar ache of Naomi's absence, not the raw agony of early grief, but a steady awareness of all she should have seen. The ceremony began with introductions. A community board member detailed the sweeping changes mandated by federal intervention, independent oversight panels with real authority, mandatory bias training with teeth, clear escalation protocols that couldn't be overridden by a single doctor's ego. But perhaps most importantly, she continued, we're creating paths for the next generation. She outlined the scholarship program established in Naomi's name, funded by assets seized during the investigation. These scholarships will support Black students pursuing careers in nursing, midwifery, and maternal health care. We're not just changing rules, we're changing who gets to make them. Tessa Glenn wheeled forward for the ribbon cutting. Her hands were steady now as she lifted the scissors. Before making the cut, she spoke, her voice carrying clearly across the lawn. I spent 30 years watching the same stories repeat, she said, watching good people stay quiet because speaking up felt impossible, watching families get buried in paperwork instead of getting justice. She met Elias's eyes briefly. Naomi Ward wasn't the first mother we lost to this system, but because of her husband's refusal to back down, because of everyone who finally chose truth over comfort, she will be one of the last. The scissors flashed in the sunlight. The ribbon floated apart. Applause rippled through the crowd. Dr. Park stepped forward to explain the clinic's approach. His voice had gained confidence since the trial, carrying the authority of someone who'd learned the cost of silence. Every patient who comes through these doors will be heard, he stated firmly. Every concern will be taken seriously. Every life will be treated as precious. He gestured to the diverse staff assembled behind him. We've built a team that reflects our community, that understands cultural competency isn't just a buzzword. It's the difference between life and death. The Federal Consent Decree Administrator outlined specific changes. Mandatory response times for maternal distress, required documentation of all monitoring decisions, clear chains of accountability that couldn't be buried in bureaucracy. What had once been guidelines were now legal requirements with real penalties attached. These changes aren't suggestions, she emphasized. They're legally binding commitments with federal oversight. Any facility that fails to comply will face immediate consequences. Representatives from local medical schools announced partnerships with the clinic, creating training rotations that would emphasize equity alongside clinical skills. A community advocate detailed the new oversight board's structure, how it would review complaints, monitor compliance, and maintain independence from hospital administration. Finally, it was Elias's turn to speak. He approached the podium slowly, still holding his child. The crowd quieted, recognizing the weight of the moment. He looked out at the gathered faces, some familiar from the long months of investigation and trial, others new allies in the fight for change. Naomi believed in dignity, he began, his voice steady despite the emotion visible in his eyes. She believed every person deserved to be heard, to be valued, to be treated with basic human respect. He adjusted his hold on the baby, who reached toward the microphone with curious fingers. She wasn't just my wife. She was a force for good in this world. Intelligent, compassionate, unwilling to accept that some lives mattered less than others. He paused, gathering his thoughts. This clinic isn't about vengeance. It's not about punishment. It's about finally building what should have existed all along. A place where every mother's pain matters, where every family's fears are heard, where no one is dismissed because of their race or background. The baby made a soft sound, drawing gentle laughter from the crowd. Elias smiled slightly. My child will grow up knowing their mother's name stands for change, that her life forced a broken system to finally face its failures, that her memory isn't just grief, it's action. The applause began slowly, then swelled, rolling across the lawn in waves. Tessa Glenn wiped tears from her eyes. Dr. Park stood straighter, his expression reflecting renewed purpose. Federal officials nodded in solemn acknowledgement of promises made and kept. Elias stood beneath the banner bearing Naomi's name, their child reaching toward the sunlight. The applause continued, carrying not just approval, but commitment, a community's promise to remember, to vigilantly guard these hard-won changes, to ensure Naomi's legacy would remain alive in more than just words. Evening settled over the quiet neighborhood, painting the sky in deepening shades of purple and gold. Elias Ward walked along the familiar sidewalk, his baby secured against his chest in a carrier. The gentle rhythm of their steps matched the steady beat of crickets beginning their nightly chorus. The same route felt different now. Houses that had witnessed his raw grief months ago now saw a man changed, not healed, exactly, but transformed. Like steel forged in fire, the pain hadn't lessened so much as it had been reshaped into something purposeful. His child stirred, making those soft, contented sounds that still caught his breath sometimes. Tiny fingers curled around the fabric of his shirt, trusting and secure. The evening air carried the scent of fresh-cut grass and cooling asphalt. Ordinary details that Naomi would have noticed and appreciated. Your mama loved evenings like this, Elias said softly to the baby. She'd sit on our porch and tell me all the little things most people miss, how the light hit the trees just so, how you could tell the season was changing by which birds were singing. A woman watering her garden waved as they passed. She'd testified at the trial, one of Hargrove's former patients, who'd survived his negligence but carried the scars. Her presence in the neighborhood was another reminder of how the world had shifted. Not through shouting or violence, but through the steady pressure of truth, finally spoken aloud. Elias adjusted the baby's hat, remembering the day's earlier ceremony. The clinic would open its doors tomorrow, starting the real work of turning promises into practice. Dr. Park had already scheduled training sessions for the staff, determined to build a culture where speaking up was expected, not punished. The thing about power, Elias continued his quiet conversation with his child, is that it's not about who has the loudest voice or the biggest title. It's about who refuses to look away when something's wrong. He thought of Nurse Tessa Glenn, who'd risked everything to slip him that first crucial piece of evidence. Sometimes the strongest people are the ones who just keep showing up, day after day, doing what's right, even when it's hard. They passed the local police station, its windows reflecting the sunset. Detective Malloy's desk sat empty now, His badge surrendered after the extent of his corruption emerged. The new captain had already implemented changes, mandatory reporting protocols, clear documentation requirements, no more informal favors between departments. A light breeze rustled through maple trees lining the street. Elias remembered his own rage in those early days, the temptation to answer cruelty with violence, to make Hargrove feel a fraction of the pain he'd caused. But that path would have betrayed everything Naomi believed in. "Your mama taught me something important," he said, his voice steady despite the weight of memory. "She showed me that real strength isn't about making people afraid. It's about making things better, even when that's harder than making things hurt." The baby yawned, settling deeper against his chest. Elias smiled, thinking how these evening walks had become their ritual. In the beginning, they'd been an escape from the emptiness of the house. Now they felt more like meditation, a time to reflect on how far they'd come and how far they still had to go. A group of medical students passed by, heading toward the bus stop. They wore the distinctive lanyards of the Naomi Ward Scholarship Program, their animated discussion carrying fragments about patient advocacy and community health. One of them recognized Elias and nodded respectfully, not with pity, but with understanding of what his fight had achieved. "Change doesn't happen all at once," Elias continued his gentle monologue. "It's like building a case, piece by piece, fact by fact, until the truth becomes too solid to ignore." He thought of the federal consent decrees, the new oversight boards, the training programs spreading to other hospitals. Sometimes justice looks like paperwork and meetings and really boring rules. But those rules? They save lives. They turned onto their street as the first stars began appearing. Porch lights winked on, creating pools of warmth in the growing dusk. Their own house stood quiet but welcoming, Naomi's flower boxes still blooming with the perennials she'd planted. "I used to think being strong meant never showing fear," Elias admitted softly. "But your mama knew better. She taught me that real courage is feeling afraid and speaking up anyway. It's using whatever power you have to protect people who need protecting." The baby had drifted to sleep, peaceful against his heartbeat. Elias paused at the end of their driveway, looking up at the deepening sky. The world hadn't magically become fair or kind. Racism hadn't vanished. Prejudice hadn't dissolved. Injustice hadn't surrendered. But something fundamental had shifted. The silence that had protected Hargrove had been broken. The system that had enabled him had been exposed. The pattern that had killed Naomi, that had nearly killed so many others, had been interrupted. Not through violence or vengeance, but through the patient, relentless application of truth and law. "Your mama changed things," Elias whispered, carefully ascending their porch steps. "Not by being the loudest or the angriest, but by being absolutely clear about what was right. And when people tried to bury that truth, we didn't let them. We kept digging, kept pushing, kept insisting that her life mattered." The porch swing moved gently in the evening breeze. Naomi's favorite spot, where she'd spent so many evenings planning community programs and dreaming up ways to help people. It didn't stand empty now so much as waiting, holding space for the work that would continue. "Naomi," Elias said her name into the quiet air, feeling not the raw edge of loss, but the solid foundation of victory. Not just legal victory, though that mattered, but the deeper victory of refusing to let power hide behind silence, of insisting that every life deserved dignity, of proving that justice wasn't just a word, but a choice made real through action. If you enjoyed the story, leave a like to support my channel, and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. On the screen, I have picked 2 special stories just for you. Have a wonderful day.